potholes there somewhere.
Here we go. 4, 3, 2.
You're not talking into your microphone.
On 3.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to call tonight's meeting to order, the Muscatine City Council, March 7th, 2019. Cinda, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Spread,
Present.
Harvey,
Present.
Brockert,
Present.
Saucedo,
Present.
Brackett,
Present.
Fitzgerald,
Here.
Malcolm,
Present.
7 present, 0 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. Will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We are going to begin tonight's meeting by swearing in firefighter Zach Dywald. If you'll please meet me at the podium. Try to speak into that if you can, so the folks at home can hear.
Check, 1, 2, 3.
There you go. Turn and face me and raise your right hand. I, Zach Dywald,
I, Zach Dewald,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the constitutions
that I will support the constitutions
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Iowa,
and the state of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties of firefighter
discharge all the duty of firefighter
in the city of Muscatine, Iowa,
in the city of Muscatine, Iowa,
as now or hereafter
as now or hereafter
required by law.
required by law.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Walk around front here.
Congratulations. Thank you.
And then I need you to sign this, Zach. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Welcome. You're all free to go have cake and ice cream and celebrate.
Are we?
No.
We got to plan these for the last thing on the agenda.
Instructions.
He had a lot of people here for him. That's always such the best part. We're going to go ahead and move along with tonight's agenda. We're on number 5. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, which includes items 6A, items 8A through E, items 9A, items 12A and B, and tonight's bills totaling $3,061,076.76.
So moved.
Second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going to back up to number 4. I forgot to ask if there was anybody else here who would like to talk about something that's not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone here? All right, we'll keep moving then. We're going to move on down to number 7, We have a couple of public hearings tonight. The first public hearing concerns the plan specifications, form of contract, cost estimates, and bid opening date for the Hauser and Fulham Street roundabout. Now is the time for the public to comment. Please state your name and address.
Robert Bromwell, 2414 Lucas Street, Muscatine. I would like to just make a couple of statements. Last year when we had this meeting for the roundabout for the Hauser and Fulham Avenue, we had about approximately 60 people out here, and they was all against it. Where they are at tonight, I don't know, but they are still against it. I put a thing on Facebook today, and I had probably 100 hits on it, all against it. But as they all know, it's all sealed and done. There is no more discussion about it because the city has decided to go ahead and do it. And so when they decide to do it, it's done. And the people don't have a right to say anything. They have a right to say something, but nobody listens. And I think that it would be nice if the city councilman and woman would start listening to the people once in a while to see what the people want. They don't want the roundabout. They just, there are some things that's good about it, but there's a lot of things that's bad about it. We got along real good with the four-way stop sign there for as long as they was working on the Cedar Street roundabout. We've gotten along with it real fine. I have not heard one complaint this year from anybody. Has anybody else heard a complaint? I have not heard one complaint from anybody. But yet, we're still going to get the roundabout. Why? Because the city wants it. You realize how many cities we've got in the state of Iowa? Now, I don't know how much this roundabout, how much this grant is for, how much it's going to cost. But you realize that if we've got 1,000 cities, and you multiply that figure times 1,000, and that's probably low, but think of the money that we are wasting over the whole state. They say it's free money. It's not free money. Who's paying for it? You and I. We are all paying for it. So there is no free money out there. So I just wish that when things like this come up, I wish the city council would listen, and instead of putting it off for a year and letting it all die down and nobody cares anymore about it because it's all went by the wayside, why don't we address it when the situation arises? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bromwell. Is there anyone else? Please keep your comments to something new that hasn't already been said.
Roger Roth, Clark House. In relation to them on cost, concerning the one on Cedar Street, I talked to the Iowa Department of Transportation. Roundabouts cost more than to use lanes for turning. Again, like last time, I said, are we using stewardship in this? If we're not, then forget it. We also told you we could put up signs under the stop sign for morning business traffic, afternoon business traffic for 1 hour to turn right only. Another safety bonus. I also have told you that you have automobiles that see a two-wheel vehicle coming down, motorized or otherwise, and they forget the laws of science or they just didn't see them there. A case in point, for example, I was coming down Cedar Street with that new roundabout. I was about where the nursing home was at. Someone's coming off of Logan. Instead of yielding, they thought, well, he's far enough away. The laws of science said when he turns, he's going to be moving much slower. By the time he turned, I was on top of him. And being a better bicyclist, I guess, I bounced off of him and away. Then he realized I was there. His insurance company would have had a field day if there had been worse than what we experienced. You have kids up there. It's a one-lane roundabout. Kids get on the roundabout. They don't know about the speed of traffic. They don't know the car is like, makes you look like a tin can on the road. You've got to configure that in too. In fact, it was the state of Wisconsin that said concerning two-wheeled vehicles, you get to the center of the road to get through the roundabout. Otherwise, the traffic will just pass you by and maybe cause an accident. You got centrifugal force. The state of Wisconsin using semis. The centrifugal force pushes you towards the curb. There is no denying that. They show that. When I was going down, I had to go towards the curb from the center. And guess who's in between me? The weather. You may have a problem with weather. They're doing pretty good in the wintertime when it comes to ice and snow. I thank the city for that. But if we have high winds and you're turning, let's say on that new roundabout, that wind's coming in at you and you're turning, it will use that centrifugal force maybe to push you right off the road. Wind shows no mercy. You've got to really consider all of these and other things. I have given the mayor and 2 of our council members for 2-lane. What about 1 lane when you got an emergency vehicle? One of the other problems is you got a lot of traffic there. How is that vehicle going to get to where it's going to in a timely manner? It can't. There's too much traffic. And there's no way to have a side road or a shoulder for them to move over so the vehicle can get through. And I do not want to see the city in an insurance case because they couldn't get through.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roth. Is there anyone else? Please state your name and address.
Jeff Sorensen, 620 Weir Street, Muscatine. I'd just like to say that I'm in favor of the roundabout. That intersection at Fulham and Hauser, I drive it every day a couple times, and it's been a problem. I know we heard some probably conflicting in my experiences with the four-way stop. The four-way stop just pushed the problem back to Cedar and Mulberry, or Cedar and Hauser, so it didn't really do anything. You had more congestion there, I felt. So I think it's a good thing. With the proposed development going in there, I think we'll need to do something to move traffic more quickly there, and I think I trust the engineers. I'm not a traffic expert. If that's the right solution, I think it's a good project. I thought the one at Cedar has been a great project. Cedar and Logan, I use that all the time, and it seems to have worked well to me.
Thank you, Mr. Sorensen. Anyone else? Please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Brittany Stewart. This is my first city council meeting, so bear with me, and I have a cold. I am a new homeowner. I just recently bought the house at 1610 Hauser Street, so I live on the corner of Hauser and Fulham, so I am directly affected by the roundabout being put in. As far as I'm concerned, I was under the impression that the roundabout was contingent on the homeowner's approval. We haven't given our full consent. We've spoke with the city engineer about things that could be done to our house because our driveway would be directly in the roundabout. But from what I'm hearing tonight, this is my first city council meeting regarding the roundabout. From what I'm hearing tonight, it sounds like it's full blown. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is it?
It has not been voted on yet.
It has not been voted on. Okay.
It will be tonight.
Good. Okay, so what I would like to say is, as a first-time homeowner, my boyfriend and I, we own the home together. We had planned on increasing the value of the home. We got a really good deal on our house, and being first-time homeowners, we would like to increase the value of our home. Well, we can't do that if this roundabout goes in, and I'll tell you why. We had planned on increasing our garage, which is currently a 1-car garage, to a 2-car garage, which would make us take our garage, which is currently facing Hauser, off of Hauser Street and put it on Fulham. Now, I'm not exactly for sure because obviously you have to go through the city to have all of this approved, but what I can find is that we are currently an S3 mixed use. the map is like a little confusing, the district map, but I think we fall into residential 3, which requires 6 feet from the city sidewalk. Currently, we have 11 foot from our current garage to the city sidewalk, which would allow us to expand our garage in order to have a 2-car garage. So we would have a 22-foot garage, leaving 6 foot from where the garage ends to the city sidewalk. If the roundabout goes in, we cannot do that, which therefore we lose an increased value on our home because the roundabout and the medians block that area where we would want to potentially have our garage. Like we would not be able, we would not be able to enter our garage from where the roundabout is. Now the city engineer has talked to us 1 or 2 times and has said, well, we can bulldoze the driveway off of Hauser and basically put it in. I'm sure you guys have all seen the map or whatever. We would bulldoze the front of your driveway. We would patch the front driveway door, and then we would have it go around back, which is kind of an inconvenience for us because as first-time homeowners, like we don't really want our stuff changed unless it's adding value to the home. Unfortunately, we don't know what a roundabout's going to do to the resale value of our home. I don't think it's going to affect it as far as negatively, like we paid $145,800 for our house. I don't think our value is going to be any less. But how are we supposed to know if, one, we can sell our house in a timely manner? I don't know how long, if we plan on selling our house, I don't know how long it's going to sit on the market. When we bought our house, we bought it the day that it went on the market. That's how quickly the resale value was. So, or the resale time was, I guess you want to call it. So the previous owners, which they did not tell us that a roundabout was planned on going in. We had no idea that this was even a thing when we bought our house. We found out from the city engineer, actually. He came and knocked on our door. So that was a huge surprise for us. And we had already planned on, when we looked at the house, we were like, oh, 2-car garage is a really good idea, raise the resale value. Let's see what else. Also, it's a huge inconvenience. And then another thing somebody else already said, like snow removal. How is snow removal gonna, be taken care of? And then also there's a lot of large buses and PMW trucks. We have Crossroads that's right down the road from us. We have a lot of special needs people who walk, in the area. I don't know. I think these are all things that should be taken into consideration, obviously. And this is my first city council meeting, so I don't know what's already been talked about. But my main, concern is the resale value of our home. It's just a huge inconvenience for us. Our house is the #1 house I believe that will be affected by this. And so it is something that should be considered. I'm not necessarily opposed, but at the same time, I think that there's a better solution. Potentially a stoplight. Like I think a stoplight, the whole point of a roundabout is to keep traffic flowing. And I agree with that. Traffic should stay flowing, but also, a stoplight is also a equally okay solution. I don't know if I forgot anything. I'm a little nervous. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
But,
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
What's that?
We appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Is there anyone else? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have another public hearing concerning the proposed amendment number 1 to the city budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th of 2019. This resolution will amend the 18-19 budget to the revised estimate amounts considered by the City Council during the budget review process. This includes amending both revenues and expenditures to the currently estimated amounts. Amendments also reflect updated capital project construction schedules. Now is the time for the public to comment. Hearing nothing,
Move to close.
do I have a motion to close?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Brockert with a second by Councilman Harvey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and this public hearing is closed. The last public hearing concerns the proposed adoption of the city's budget and certification of taxes for Fiscal year 1920. The amounts included in the public hearing notice and budget adoption resolution reflect the budget amounts approved by the City Council during their budget review sessions and are in the format required by the state of Iowa. The final budget documents must be filed with the state on or before March 15th of each year. Prior to any formal action by City Council, a public hearing is required. Now is the time for the public to comment. Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to close?
Move to close.
Councilman Harvey, will you second?
You bet.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Harvey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Are you going to do a PowerPoint presentation now?
Yes.
This presentation is kind of an overview. We've gone through the budgets one by one during the budget meetings, but this is kind of an entity-wide summary and also points out some of the significant items added to the budget, discussed during the budget sessions, and the decisions made by City Council. First slide, the total budget for the upcoming year, the operating budget and capital projects, $62.7 million, a significant amount. $55.7 million for revenues. We're estimating a $6,150,000 bond issue to fund some capital projects. $14.1 million in general property taxes, and the tax rate is budgeted to remain at the 15.67209 rate, which is the same as the current rate. The budget does include an increase in the utility franchise fee from 2% to 5%, and we'll discuss a little bit of that later in the presentation. This slide, and we don't need to go through it all now, but this is the entity-wide, where does all the city's money come from? And you can see the various categories going around there. About the 2 o'clock area. Property taxes are 25% of the total city revenues. There's also TIF revenues, local option, state and federal grants, road use tax. Charges for services is another large 28% of the total budget. Use of money and property and other revenues. And the last 2 slides actually define those categories. But again, that's $55.7 million in total city revenues. The next slide is how are the funds used? And this, the far upper left, capital projects, $15.3 million of the total $62,000. Public Works, and this is mainly their operating budgets, $3 million. Public safety, 16%, over $10 million. Community and economic development, culture and recreation, $3.7 million, and that's the various parks, activities, library, art center. Housing programs, general government, debt service, that's over $4 million, 7% of the total. And enterprise funds are $18 million, which is about 29% of the total. So again, that is an entity-wide summary of just the overall budget. Some of these I'll go over pretty quickly. There's different levies within the city's total levy. The general fund levy, which is at the maximum of 810, debt service levy, tort liability, special revenue for employee benefits, and transit. The next slide is the tenure tax rate schedule, and it is pretty flat. The last 8 years have been the exact same tax rate, that 15.67, and the 2 prior years before that was 1577, only slightly higher. The next, I'll just point out a few things on these slides. That we've maintained the same property tax rate for about the last 10 years. We were able to this year by increasing and decreasing individual levies, and that's worked for the last several years. We're still not funding 100% of employee benefits from taxes. Some of that's from the general fund balance. The next slide kind of shows the increases and decreases in the individual levies. But it comes out in total to the same 1567. Again, I'll just point out some items on this slide. Again, the budget does not include an emergency levy. That would have generated about $240,000 more in revenues if the emergency levy would have been levied. With the same tax rate, the owner of a $100,000 home, and this is just so people can kind of calculate their own values, with the rollback, $56,918, they would pay $892 in city taxes, and that's $20 more than the prior year, and that increases because of the change in the residential rollback, and the city has no control over the rollback. No change in commercial and industrial rollback. Multi-residential values rolled back an additional 3.75%, and so there is a savings from the prior year on multi-residential properties. And this, just as a note, this is only the city's part of people's overall tax bills. And that's shown on the next two slides, actually. The city's rate is shown there as $15.67. The school, and this is for the current year, we don't have final levy rates for FY20 for the school and county yet. 14.82 for the school and 868 for the county. Showing that a little different way on the next slide. So the far left, of each property tax dollar that city residents pay, 40 cents of it goes for city services, and about 38 cents for the schools, and 22 cents for the county. So again, the city's only 40% or 40 cents of each tax dollar. Some of the general fund highlights, we always want to have our ending fund balance be in a good position. We don't want to balance the budget based on using the fund balance. The ending balance projected is $4,680,000, which is 22.2% of general fund expenditures. The policy minimum is 16.7, so it's well over the minimum. But again, we don't want to balance the budget using fund balance. A history of the percentages is on this slide. At the end of last fiscal year, it was actually 25%. The revised estimate shows 23%, and then the ending for next year is budgeted at 22.2. And some of that 25% is because expenditures were actually under budget last year, which raised that percent up. So if our expenditures come in under budget, those percentages can vary. And again, I'll just point out a few things on this slide. Budget includes police and fire pension contributions, $1,382,000. IPERS, that rate didn't change this year. The budget includes a 2.25% increase for both union and non-union positions. Items 4 and 5 kind of summarize personnel changes in the budget. Item 4, there was a decrease in the library budget between the original budget and the revised estimate in the library as they were getting used to their operation in the new facility. For next year, there's a total of 2.1 full-time equivalent positions that are added. Of the 2.1, 1.5 of those are in the fire department, with 3 firefighters being added midway through the fiscal year. And that's, there's been funding identified for that. The next slide, number 6, there was a part-time right-of-way inspector position added as part of the Public Works reorganization. And that's a 0.54 full-time equivalent increase in the, from budget to budget, and 0.41 increase from the revised estimate to the budget. The position is budgeted to start in May of this year. So that, and then there was a 0.27 full-time equivalent increase in the Art Center budget for the education coordinator, going from 29 hours to full-time, and a slight reduction in the library. Again, starting on 7, TIF funds will again be used to fund economic development. Outside agencies will continue to be funded from the budget. The Chamber and Humane Society subsidies each went up $5,000. Senior Resources requested their same $25,000, and that's been included in the budget. And the contract with MCSA for the homeless prevention program is again at $25,000, the amount they requested. The CVB is at, continues the 25% allocation of hotel motel tax, and it's estimated at $115,000. And the budget again continues contributions to the equipment replacement and computer replacement reserves. Number 11 there, this budget does include a significant increase in the IT budget. And this is to enhance the security and improve the city's computer system to reduce the risk of any future ransomware attacks. Another significant item in the budget is the $148,000 allocation for the squad car video system, which the new system will include body-worn cameras. Down on number 14, the part of the utility franchise fee increase, and it's about $308,000. That allowed funding for the increased allocation for IT and the increased allocation for the capital, including the body cameras for the police department. ATE revenues are actually projected to be less than budgeted because of the new process requiring them to be go through court if they're not paid initially. Yeah, number 15, the budget again provides a balance between the overall property tax rate, maintaining a sufficient level of general fund balance, and providing departments with the resources and equipment needed to perform their department functions efficiently. Budget again includes $50,000 in assigned funding for merit increases for full-time employees, non-bargaining unit employees. And the budget, again, this is the last several years, includes funds for significant building and facility improvements. And those are funded, we included money in the 2016 and 2018 bond issues, and we're proposing to include more in the 2020 bond issue to continue those. For the enterprise funds, we have rate increases budgeted for the sewer collection and drainage, refuse collection and golf course. The sewer and collection and drainage, that was part of the rate study and built in annual increases in those fees. Fees are not budgeted to increase in the transfer station, landfill, ambulance, transit, and parking funds. All of the enterprise funds are projected to have a positive fund balance at the end of FY20. Refuse collection has had a deficit because of the implementation of the automated refuse program, but that's projected to be eliminated next year. The landfill deficit was actually eliminated several years back in 14-15. The last bullet point, transfer station, that's also had a deficit, and the budget includes a reallocation of the full rate tipping fee at the transfer station to allow for the transfer station to retain more of those funds for needed operations and equipment. The next slide is kind of a summary of the capital projects included in the budget. 15.3 million. About half of that is for the Mississippi Drive Grandview Avenue corridor. Other street improvements, sidewalk improvements, 2.557 for the West Hill Sewer Project, about 940,000 for the West Side Trail. Some of the CAT grant proceeds will flow, or expected to flow through the city for the county project at Deep Lakes Park. Several improvements in the park department, riverfront fence, soccer field number 3 improvements, and Fuller Playground resurfacing. Again, 302 for deferred maintenance projects on the buildings. Estimated 1.585 for the downtown streetscape project. Kind of a placeholder, 300,000 to begin renovation of the former IDOT building, and 90,000 for the study for the water pollution control plant. We added in that second paragraph there that at the time we did the budget, we didn't have enough information to actually include airport improvement projects in there. And those are still being determined, and that we'll have to amend the budget for those. But at the time when the budget was being done, we didn't have enough information. So the budget, again, is an overall financial plan, both operating and capital, and it will continue to provide numerous services to the public, maintain a good general fund balance, and provide that infrastructure improvements will continue in the city. Just a couple notes. There's always concerns, whether the state's going to continue funding the backfill. There's also concerns about any restrictions on ATEs, and those are the same concerns we had a year ago. And then also TIF, the state legislature can review uses of TIF as well. And then if we would lose any of those funding sources, the fund balance policy provides it that's a accepted use, an interim use, a plan to address any revenue shortfalls is determined. But again, this is a very good budget. It addresses a lot of needs in the city, both infrastructure and some amenities as well. So I think it's a good budget, and I think it was considered well by City Council.
Thank you. We're going to move along. We have a proclamation tonight for Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is April. Whereas in 2017, the Iowa Department of Human Services conducted a total of 496 child abuse assessments in Muscatine County, with a total of 191 of those assessments being either confirmed or founded. Whereas child abuse and neglect is a serious problem affecting every segment of our community and requires action from everyone in our community to prevent it. Whereas our children are our most valuable resource and will shape the future of the Muscatine community. And whereas child abuse and neglect directly harms children and increases the likelihood of long-term physical and mental health problems, alcohol and substance abuse, continued family violence, and criminal behavior. Whereas child abuse and neglect occurs when people find themselves in stressful situations and don't know how to cope. Whereas the majority of child abuse cases stem from situations and conditions that are preventable in an engaged and caring community. Whereas every child can have a great childhood by making sure each family has the support and education they need in raising their children in safe, nurturing environments. Whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, faith communities, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Whereas community members must make every effort to promote programs and activities that benefit children and their families. Therefore, I do hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month and call upon all citizens to increase their participation in building caring connections with families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the community in which we live. Paula Lavasser is the president and chair of the Muscatine County Child Abuse Prevention Council, which is called Muscatine County Cares, Child Abuse Response and Education System. I've asked Paula if she'd like to say a couple words. Thank you, Paula. Thanks.
The statistics are startling when you think about it. Almost 200 children in 2017 had founded child abuse cases in our own community. Those are ones that have been reported to the Department of Human Services, and there are far more that are never reported. This is a problem that impacts every single one of us, whether it's a child in your neighborhood, a family member, whether it's a family that you work with, go to school with, go to church with. These are all people we know and love that are impacted by child abuse. We're learning more and more about how childhood trauma impacts people throughout their life. There are quite a few things listed in here. I work at New Horizons, which is an addictions treatment agency. We know that there's a huge connection between childhood trauma and addiction, but there's a huge connection between that and other mental health issues, people's ability to thrive in school, to have meaningful relationships, and all of those things then impact our ability to serve as adults in our own community. So it's really, really important that during the month of April, and actually all year long, we all make an effort to do what we can to impact each child in our community having a positive childhood. So whether that's reaching out to children, having a positive interaction with them, or being supportive to families. You know, when you see that stressed out parent who seems like they've had enough, reach out to them and help support them so that they don't reach out in a negative way with their child. We have a couple things going on during the month of, well, we have several things going on during the month of April, but a couple that just anyone in the community can participate in. Friday, April 5th is Blue Out Day. Blue is considered, I don't know why it's considered a color.
I don't either, but it's the color of child abuse prevention.
It's the color for child abuse prevention. So we encourage people to wear blue on Friday, April 5th. If you're a social media person, please take a picture, post with the hashtag Great Childhoods Muscatine, and let's fill Facebook and Instagram and Twitter with photos of people donning blue in support of children in our community. The other thing is we like the Painted Rock movement here in Muscatine, and to help City Council kind of jump on that bandwagon, we're encouraging people to put messages on rocks or paint them blue and hide them, also with the hashtag Great Childhoods Muscatine, and hide them throughout Muscatine County. So to get y'all started.
Did you bring us all a rock, Paula?
I didn't bring you one, Diana.
Oh, man.
Thank you.
Now they're all different, so if you don't like yours, trade with somebody else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. We really appreciate you coming in. Normally, proclamations are a little bit earlier in the evening, so thank you for your patience. You'll see a lot of paperwork and notices on social media about Blue Out Day for April 5th. So a lot of businesses are eager to join in and take pictures of all of them dressed in blue. And because one thing that we have certainly discovered over the years is it takes everyone to keep children safe. So thank you so much. We're going to move along with tonight's agenda. We are on number 11A. We have a resolution approving the plan specifications, form of contract, cost estimates, and establishing a bid opening date for the Hauser-Fulham roundabout, which is what we talked about in public hearing A. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilman Fitzgerald, Councilman Spread, would you second?
Second. Yeah.
We have a motion by Councilman Fitzgerald with a second by Councilman Spread. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. I visited the roundabout in Iowa City, or Coralville rather, today that was referenced by Shive Hattery. It said it's going to be a good deal like the one they proposed for Hauser-Fulham. I found some kind of striking differences. Part of it is rural. The housing density isn't near as much as what it is at Hauser-Fulham. And I thank Ms. Stewart for her presentation, because that also reminded me, not only do we have Crossroads close by, there's also group homes for special needs adults. My grandson is one of those special needs adults. And along with the fact that we've got 4 properties impacted, I asked myself, would I want to buy one of those properties? And that answer is no. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Your Honor, I also share some of Councilman's concern, seeing how I took the privilege when we first brought this up last year, I believe, and I physically walked this area, and my concern was, how would this affect the homeowners on all 4 corners there? And is there a better way to do this? I don't see how this is. I see the design and how on paper it looks like it'll work, but I've been trained that in real life, everything on paper doesn't work the way it looks. And I'm concerned for, if I was a homeowner, I don't think I want a bus that might break down in front of my house because it's stuck in a roundabout. All kinds of nightmares come to me. I have a problem with this. But that's my thought. I'm really concerned of how does this negatively affect the homeowners.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, go ahead.
So, my concerns are, when I asked for the overlay and basically looking at the size dimensionally from one size to the other, what we did is we requested the cedar versus what this actually Hauser would be. This is significantly smaller, in my opinion, dimensionally. I'm concerned about the new subdivision that's coming in. Right now, we're looking at the fact that we don't see that much traffic coming from that side of what's that street, on Fulham Street. And then if we think about children eventually crossing, not to mention the existing that are already there, but if we think about the future of these kids eventually crossing through there, you know, there's no stop signs, there's no stop lights, there's nothing to protect them. I'm concerned about that. Another one was, you know, the added cost. You had mentioned in regards to them potentially moving at your garages and relocations. You know, those funds could be easily used for traffic lights, in my opinion. I'm not a pro to having the stop signs either, just because I feel like that, as Mr. Sorensen mentioned earlier, that just moved the problem further up towards Cedar Street. I've had comments from public in regards to saying, should we look at timed lights? Could we look at potentially doing that? That would be a temporary fix, but I think that whole area needs to be redone in regards to concrete and fixing. So I would be of the opinion of putting in the infrastructure for traffic lights versus stop signs, because I don't believe that addresses the issue. And those traffic lights are going to help, because eventually that side of Fulham is going to have 60 more homes. We're going to have more traffic there than what we see. And I think, from my perspective, we have to see further, not just looking at addressing it now, because it may be a fix for a temporary fix, but we may be creating a problem that we're just not seeing right now. So I'm not for this roundabout in my view.
Thank you. Councilman Brackett?
I've gone back and forth on how I feel about this, because in general, I do support roundabouts. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned so far tonight is that if we do not accept this grant, if we do not proceed forward on this, that the funds that we're going to repair the concrete in that area will have to come from some other source. That other source would be, you know, our budget. It's not in the budget for this year, so I would want to make sure that people understand who are opposed to it, that if it does not go through, then that intersection probably is not going to see any changes whatsoever, as far as I can tell. I know last year when we had discussed this project, I had asked for some signage changes to see if we could address the traffic issue in a different way, looking at putting, as has been mentioned a little bit tonight, putting signage in that said no left turn, but it's not just on Fulham, onto Hauser, but at the bottom of Kindler, where the traffic is coming from the schools, or from one of the schools at a minimum. I know the schools are looking at changing their traffic pattern in the near future, because they're going to be changing the layout of their driveway. So I don't know. I've been, like I said, back and forth on this. I just want to make sure people understand, if this doesn't go through, that section of the road is pretty bad right now. And another thing too, that as far as traffic lights go, traffic lights are exponentially more expensive than a roundabout or stop signs, or, you know, the controlled lights are at a lot more expense, and an expense that has to be redone after a period of time. So that's my comments on it. Thank you.
Council, anything else? Go ahead, Brian.
Mayor, Council, Brian Steinman, Public Works Director. I just wanted to say a few words. I just wanted to remind Council that this came about to staff. We had numerous complaints, request calls that we deal with for this intersection. So staff did our best to try to find a solution and try to find a funding source for that solution. We came up with this proposal based on our work with consultants. It does qualify for Transportation Safety Improvement Program grant funding, which would pay for, well, initially it paid for 100% of the cost. With the added scope to repair some of the pavement in the intersection, we did go a little bit over that, which we would have been able to fund from the roadway maintenance funds. I think this is a good example of how things in city councils aren't a done deal. They're not a slam dunk. There is a process that we go through here. So I want people to know that it's not staff trying to ramrod this thing through and just get our way. We listened to the public, we've listened to you, we've done our best to present you with a solution for this issue within the city. I'm a little disappointed from what I've heard so far. I think that we have a good project, and I think it would benefit the city greatly, but ultimately it's your decision. So With that, I will sit back down, but thank you for hearing us out.
Thank you. Ma'am. Ma'am, this wouldn't be the time to talk to him. I understand. One thing is we try to always make sure that we speak at the podium so the folks at home can see. We have a lot of people at home that watch our council meetings, and they can't, you'd think that they could hear people out there talking, but they can't hear anything that anybody out there says. I understand. Thank you. Hearing anything, nothing else?
I just,
Yes, please come up.
Andrew Anderson, 217 West 4th, and I know this is not the usual public time, but roundabouts don't work in every location. There are some cases, though, where they're very good at solving problems. So Logan and Cedar Street is an example where it currently works so well. Most of us don't remember the dozen or so cars we waited behind. That location is a pretty close parallel to the to Hauser Street, and with the additional traffic that will be there, this is probably going to be a really good solution. And when you look in other communities, it has worked really well. So I know there's a lot of uncertainty about it. I would say based on what's happened in other communities, this could be a very good solution. And one other thing I'll say about real estate as well, that's a very good question about property values. The traffic calming effect and the way roundabouts work is likely to increase values over time in that area. So,
thank you.
Your Honor, I did have a question I was going to ask Brian while he was here in front of us, just for a quick guesstimation. What would it cost for a traffic light system to be a four-way light in that intersection? Ballpark guess. Oh, we got the expert. We got the expert coming now. Okay.
Mayor, Council, full-blown actuated traffic signals there. I know this is going to be a brutal surprise, but the costs, especially of the equipment and the columns and the mast arms, have just gone out of sight. $500,000.
And is that something that you can apply for grant funding down the road to help with?
You could.
Okay.
I would guess, and it's a strong guess. I'm going to take guess out of it. I'll bet money that you would not get any funds for it, because as yet, even though that seems like a heavily traveled intersection to us, when Shive Hattery looked at it, it didn't meet any traffic signal warrants. So they wouldn't give any grant funds for that, most likely.
Okay.
And then there's ongoing costs.
Yeah, then you have maintenance costs for that, but that's
okay.
MPW's to deal with.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ratepayers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to make one comment on the Cedar Street and Logan roundabout. I was adamantly opposed. I voted against it, almost kicking and screaming, and I'm a believer at this point that roundabout, other than a few misuses of people by people turning the wrong way. I heard about one person turning left to go to the nursing home, and she wasn't supposed to do that. But as people learn it, I think they'll get along with it. I think this is another spot that I think we need to try it. The other thing is, it's my biggest problem with that intersection is it's only 2 hours a day, or 2 times during the day. The rest of the time you're going to be able to come in and go around there, no problem at all. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind making a comment, and I'm going to echo what Phil said. And I was here when he said "heck no" and crossed his arms and stuff like that. You know, this recommendation comes from the city administrator, the city planner, the city engineer, the director of public works, the folks at Shive Haverty, and the civil engineers at IDOT. Those are the professionals that design roadways, and I'm going to believe that they know what they're doing. As far as property values, I've been in the business of financing homes for a long, long time, and I can tell you that proximity to the intersection and traffic are already baked in. This is not going to hurt you. It's going to help you. I really think so. And I'd be happy to visit with you at some time outside this about your planned improvements and perhaps help you out, but that's another matter. You know, the point is, IDOT thinks so much of this, they're willing to give us a grant to build the thing. And their focus is traffic safety. And I think we should keep that in mind. This is about traffic safety, and traffic applies to cars and trucks, it applies to bicycles, and it applies to pedestrians. I will vote in favor of this.
Councilman Saucedo?
So,
one of the things that I think is getting misled here is the fact that this is nowhere near the same size of what Cedar and Logan is. I'd like for you to come up and tell us dimensionally the size of how much smaller this is going to be, because to me it almost looks like a quarter smaller. From ID to ID of inside the diameter of where these things are going to be at.
Mayor, Council, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you asked that question. The size of this mini, if you look at Logan and Cedar, the size of this mini, the red concrete that's on the inside of that,
yeah,
is just about the size of this roundabout going to be.
Just that
now,
little middle insert?
That middle piece, yes.
That's
okay, now, everybody would immediately go, boy, that's small. Okay, the biggest piece, the biggest piece, even more important than the size of this roundabout, is that, okay, I'm going to use you, Santos. Can I use you? Okay, how fast do you drive through that roundabout at Logan and Cedar?
About 20, 25.
Honestly?
20, 25.
25,
yeah.
okay.
Because I don't trust everybody else.
What's it signed for?
I think it's 30.
15.
15.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I did not.
I'm just I'm just trying to drive home a very important point here. It's smaller, but the islands coming to it and the size of it, it will be signed for 10, and really it's anticipated that traffic will go through there at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Everybody slows down. To me, that was the one striking thing about the one in Coralville, is that everybody approached it, everybody, especially at peak hours, everybody was going real slow, but the traffic just flowed through. And so, yes, it's a shorter distance, but the speeds are a lot slower, and that's what allows it to work. Did I answer that?
Yeah, you did. So again, that's the dimensionally piece. The other difference is also between the Hauser and the Logan one is the amount of actual sidewalk usage from when you think about people actually walking on those roads. If you compare those and you say that you talk about safety from people, and we just talked about here, you know, our children, our future, I care about that. That's important to me when I think about what should we be looking at from sidewalk. I know the amount of traffic, of human traffic on Fulham or on Hauser compared to what you're saying on Cedar or on Logan. There's nowhere near the same amount. And if I look at the way that drawing is, I'm not going to want some kid to cross that thing or run across that. I just feel like it's too much smaller. And I understand where you're coming from, but I think that's even just going to probably even delay more. When we start seeing lights or probably people down at the end, you know, they're going to say, well, is this the best decision? But again, it's my opinion, it's my choice, it's my decision. Obviously, it's the opinions of the public that have also reached out to me as well.
Right.
So thank you.
The only thing I would reiterate again is just that it's going to be at slower speeds. It's going to be safer for pedestrians because you're going to be at lower speeds.
Again, but then you think about, you know, like somebody had mentioned to me, what about all the, you know, what about when I'm pulling my trailer and I want to go to the compost site? You know, how am I going to make that smart, sharp turn if I have a 20-foot trailer? Same, no different of a semi or a semi or a bus or things like that. You're going to almost have to run over them, which they're designed for, and you've explained that to me.
Yeah.
But then you also start saying, well, what if there's multiple size vehicles driving over that? And it challenges me personally because I would rather say, okay, if I'm buying the 4 properties and make it bigger, I would feel more comfortable. But we're not doing that. That funding is not even there available.
Yeah.
Just from my perspective, again, I look at that and I think about the size dimensionally, and I think about the safety and the future of that other subdivision that we're building. We're gonna end up putting something in there, and it's gonna end up having a cost associated to it because we're gonna probably have something. So I would rather vote against it in my view, but it's my opinion.
I'll be filled
Thank
for
you.
this one.
Yes.
All right, all right. Hearing nothing else?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I have a couple opinions. My problem with this roundabout is that it is too small. If you look at the layout, the diagram of the roundabout, you barely have to flick your steering wheel to go straight through it. I mean, you don't have to go around like you do at Cedar Street. And I think it's going to end up being used like an uncontrolled, straight through four-way intersection. Nobody has to stop for nobody. And then you're going to have, and people aren't going to slow down to 10 miles an hour to go through this. They just won't. They're going to, whatever the speed limit is on the street, that's what they'll be going minimum. And I hate to use Santos as an example because I do the same thing. I don't go through that one on Cedar Street at 15 miles an hour. Stop it. I go through it as fast as I can get around that corner. And
Fred's back there now, watch out.
Significantly.
Gonna put the speed camera up over there.
Well, I don't use it that often, so. But my problem, seriously, is that this roundabout is not much bigger than a normal four-way intersection. And there's no reason for people to, like I say, hardly move your steering wheel to, you know, it's like going down, avoiding a dead squirrel in the street. I mean, that's about it. And whoever's got the right-of-way, whatever road is most occupied, for instance, Hauser Street, most of the time, they're going to have the right-of-way. It's going to be one car right after the other, and the side street's going to be sitting there waiting for a break in the line. Because once you get on Hauser Street, you're not going to yield to the guy that wants to enter. You just won't. Even though people on the right have the right-of-way, you know, but that's one of those rules that.
Well, not with
so
a
I have a problem
roundabout.
with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hearing nothing else, pardon me? Yes.
Max Kaufman, 1609 Foster Street. I live not too far from that intersection. I live also not very far from the Cedar and at Logan. I do agree that the one at Cedar at Logan is good. I agree that the speed limit on the Cedar at Logan is not adhered to. But 2 points. Probably the most important point is Nadine's point in regards to her grandchild and the other children that live at the
group homes.
Handicapped area. Those children ought to be our most important consideration here. Because if you're over there in that area during the daytime, they're out there, some of them in get-abouts, whatever you want to call them, and they're totally at the mercy of the drivers. And if you don't have any traffic control there, they're just going to be at peril. And that's all that the word you got to use is at peril. And if that roundabout doesn't slow people down, and it's not going to, those children are going to be at peril. The other issue I want to address is this young lady's issue about her cost value on her home. I buy and sell houses. That's my livelihood. That's what I do for a living. And I guarantee you, young lady, your property value is going to go down. Because I would not buy your house in a heartbeat located in that location next to a roundabout. Not at the asking price that you bought it for. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Hearing nothing else, Councilman Saucedo, how do you vote?
No. Nay.
Councilwoman Brockert?
No.
Councilman Harvey?
Nay.
Councilman Spread?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
No.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Nay.
This resolution is not approved with the vote of 5 nays to 6, 5 noes, 2 yeses. I had to add my counting again. We're going to move along to 11B. We have a resolution now approving amendment number 1 to the 2018-2019 city budget, which is what we talked about in public hearing B. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Is there any discussion? I would just like to thank council or staff for all of the work that they've done, both on the revised budget for last year as well as the new one. Hearing nothing, Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
And Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11C, and this is the resolution adopting the budget and certification of taxes for fiscal year 19 and 20, which starts July 1, and that's what we talked about in public hearing C. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Spread with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Saucedo, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilman Spread?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
And Councilman Brackett.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. 11D, presented for City Council's consideration, is a resolution accepting the final completed work performed by Iowa Investments under the Kent Stein Park to Deep Lakes Park Trail project and authorizing the final payment to close out that contract. All work under the contract has been completed and approved and accepted by the city engineer, and it appears to meet the requirements of the plans and specifications. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Harvey. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Just so curious, it seems like there was quite a time period between when the project was completed and this closeout. Is that an incorrect impression?
No, that's a very correct impression.
You want the long story or the short story?
Short.
All right, we'll try to make this short story. Mayor, council. They completed the construction. DOT came out, inspected it, threw at us some additional requirements that no one knew anything about. We asked for the contractor that at that time was done to complete that extra work at the unit prices in the contract. They refused and tried to rob us. Inordinately high dollar amounts to complete that extra work. Has to be done. DOT requires it. We went through a 6-month, at least maybe more like 8-month process. And during that process, what we did was we approached the DOT. We tried to convince them that it was highway robbery to let the contractor do that. We presented what those costs should be. We presented the fact that we had another contractor that would do it for substantially less than that. And you're talking, I think it was a $50,000 difference in price on less than $50,000 worth of work. After a long extended period of time, the DOT did see the logic of that argument, did allow us to close out the contract and then have another contractor come in and do that little bit of extra work. And the extra work, you might ask, what is it? Wherever there's a gravel surface adjacent to this, like a gravel driveway that crosses that trail, we need to come in and on the property side of that, put in a 10-foot strip of concrete. They feel like gravel can get tracked out onto that trail, and there must have been somebody sue somebody about it because they're making that a requirement. So it's not a huge amount of money, but it took a long time to work through that process, a very long time.
Anything else, Councilman Harvey?
No, thank you, and I'm glad I didn't pick the long explanation.
Yeah, because I would still be here this time tomorrow.
Thank you, Jim. Hearing nothing else, Councilman Malcolm, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilman Spread?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
And Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11E. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution setting a public hearing for March 21st of this year at 7 p.m. regarding an increase in the utility franchise fee for interstate power and light. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Harvey with a second by Councilman Saucedo. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Saucedo, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilman Spread?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
And Councilman Brackett.
Aye.
This resolution is also adopted with all ayes. We're on 11F. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution approving and adopting a revenue purpose statement for the use or expenditures of revenue from natural gas franchise fee. Pursuant to the provisions of the Iowa Code, before the city adopts or amends a franchise fee rate ordinance to increase the percentage rate at which franchise fees are assessed, the city shall prepare a revenue purpose statement specifying the purpose for which the revenue collected from the increased rate will be expended. Wow. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Spread with a second by Councilman Harvey. Is there any discussion?
Your Honor,
Yes.
quick question. The next step in the process would be the adoption of an ordinance for the franchise fees. Is there any objection to bringing that back to City Council on first and final reading? That will require 6 council votes.
Rolling them all into one.
I'm good with it.
Any
I'm good with it.
objections?
Yeah.
It works.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Hearing nothing else, Councilman Malcolm, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Spread?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
And Councilman Saucedo.
Aye.
This resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11G. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution setting a public hearing for the 2020 annual plan and amendments to the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Administration Plan and the Public Housing Admissions and Continued Occupancy Policy. Per regulation, a public comment period, including a public hearing, is required prior to the adoption of the annual plan and policy amendments. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Brockert with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Spread, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
And Councilman Malcolm.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11H. We have a resolution approving the amended development agreement with the TIF Oak Park Incorporated. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion?
I have a question for.
Go ahead.
Is this any financial liability to the city for us while we extend this time period with them?
No, there's no additional financial liability. They simply had some older or out-of-date, inaccurate legal descriptions they had to work through, so.
Okay,
Just
so this is
postpone
not
it a little.
just changing dates, that's all.
Yep.
Fine.
Hearing nothing else, Councilman Harvey, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Spread?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
And Councilman Brackett.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11I. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve a letter of understanding with Bonesack and Frommelt for the fiscal year 1819 audit. Audit procedures require that a letter of understanding be signed by the auditor and the city each year documenting responsibilities for specific areas of the audit. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Malcolm. Is there any discussion?
One quick question.
Go ahead.
Will we be going for another 5-year contract starting for next year?
Nancy, can you help with that?
Normally, we would go do an RFP for another period of audit services. There was some discussion, however, in the audit committee a year ago that the audit committee may want to consider extending the agreement with Bonsack and Fromelt. But I'm thinking we want to wait till after this audit's over, and then at the time that the audit committee reviews it, and that if they're comfortable making that recommendation, we can go from there. Okay. And then if that's their recommendation, then we can bring it to council. Otherwise, we would do an RFP for another probably 5-year period.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Nancy, when you do that, can you bring up what their fee structure is for those 5 years too? I mean, I think I saw the numbers on there, but every year, is it the same amount, or is it a contracted amount that's an increase by 2 or 3%?
It goes up a few percent every year. I can't remember if it's 3%, but it was.
When we meet for the audit committee, can you just provide that information to us?
Can,
and
yeah.
we can decide if we want to renew with Boschnick or if we want to pursue potentially an RFP.
And I know when the former audit committee recommended it, their fee was significantly less than the other people that submitted proposals.
Just for reference, so when we get together, we'll share that and we'll look at those numbers.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11J. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order in the amount of $76,458 to Zimmer and Francescan for the rebuild of a Papoose No. 3 pump and purchase of a new impeller for the No. 3 pump. That's why John Cook's here. Is there a motion to approve this request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion?
Have you noticed that John never shows up unless he wants some money?
Of course. We've all noticed
It's
that.
amazing. We never see him unless he wants money. And he doesn't ask for a little money. He asks for lots of money.
Just one question, Your Honor.
Okay.
John, is this do we have another spare for this? Is there, I mean, are these the same type pumps that we have on all the other lift stations, or they're compatible, anything like that?
John Cook, Director of your Water and Resource Recovery Facility. There are 2 pumps at Papoose that are the same, 2 and 3. These pumps are nowhere else in town. These are enormous pumps, the biggest ones that we got. So we had No. 2 rebuilt, put back in right away so we could run it, and we've been running it all year. No. 3 now needs to be redone. New purchase is about $128,000, close to $130,000 for new, and we don't even know if we're going to use these pumps once the whole separation system is done. So we're just kind of planning for the next 10 years, but until all that gets done. So rebuilding and doing it the least expensive way we can is what we're heading for.
So basically, you're running just one as an inline spare.
You can only run one or the other. You cannot run both pumps at the same time. You could. The pipe is not big enough to take the flow from both pumps. So basically, you run one or the other is what you run.
Which is good. Because if we ever had one fail, that would be a major
They're a spare for each other. Yeah, they just sit there, and if you're not running 2, you're running 3. So that's why we kind of did this in the middle of winter, knowing that we don't have a lot of flow in the winter. So we're running No. 2 that's ready to go. No. 1, of course, is there running all the time. So,
Councilman Harvey.
John, it's just a comment. And I was floored by the amount of the cost of the impeller.
Yeah, it's big.
I mean, that's almost as cost as the pump.
This big around. And that deep and that tall. I mean, it's an enormous chunk of metal.
I think it's 35,000 or something like that.
30,000.
Is that just for the impeller, or for the installation and all that, and balancing and that?
Well, they don't have any of these on the shelf anywhere. That means they got to form, pour, and build this thing in a cast. It's an enormous piece of metal. It's huge, and the thing was just absolutely beaten up. I mean, it was been there since 1965. We reused No. 2. We welded things together and kind of got it going, and it's running. it's lost about maybe 10%, 15% of capacity. So number 3 will really be the primary pump that we run during wet weather, because it's going to be at full capacity once we get it back. But we figured we could limp along with a damaged number 2 impeller, but we thought we needed to have full capacity, and we went for the brand new number 3.
Right now, do either one of those pumps run continuously, or are they on a float where if it doesn't rain, they don't have to run? Or
yeah, number one runs probably 24/7. It runs all the time, okay. And that's the smaller pump. Number 2 and 3 only run during wet weather events, when the rains really start coming and the tunnel fills up. Yeah.
Does that control system automatically alternate between them?
Yes, it does.
Good. Thank you, John. Okay. Thank you. Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The request is approved. 11K, presented for City Council's consideration, is a request to approve the issuance of a purchase order in the amount of $6,935.77 to Midland Scientific for the purchase of a new BWR Peltier Biochemical Oxygen Demand Incubator. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilman Harvey with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 1114. Councilman Harvey, do you have anything to share tonight?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Spread.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Councilman Malcolm.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to give my hats off to the firemen and police officers who responded to the fire incident we had the other night. Their professionalism, their care on the adverse situations is never good for an emergency situation, but that night was extremely cold, arduous, and the fire and police officers were excellent. I was there with them for quite a while. Even though it was a hard time, I appreciated seeing them representing the city well, and that meant more to me than anything I could say for them. It's a hard job, especially at a hard time like that, and I really want to give them a thank you for a job well done. Also, since the police chief is here, I'd like to declare diplomatic immunity on behalf of Councilman Santos and Harvey, who's admitted that they might have broken the laws traveling through the roundabout. We'd like a diplomatic exemption, Chief. But thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second that.
Councilman Fitzgerald.
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Councilwoman Brockert.
I would like to echo Councilman Malcolm's assessment of the fire and police response to the fire at 104 Clinton Street. Also ask our citizens to continue to pray and support the family that was involved, as well as the firefighters, because I know it's tough for them.
Thank you. Councilman Saucedo.
I agree. I echo a lot of Nadine and Malcolm's comments. It's never an easy time, especially on people's lives were passed on that. So I'd like to see if I could get a question, maybe or a potential update on some of our potholes. I've seen a ton of work that's gone on, but again, I think communication and information helps us.
Mayor, Council, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Just kidding. I apologize. That was maybe a little out of line. We have been working, not as much this week because it's been colder again this week. When the ground's frozen, we really can't do much with them. So we've been taking that time to get our plows and our trucks back in order, get everything greased, lubricated, get the sacrificial blades off that break on the front, getting those repaired. We are hoping for some warmer weather next week, so we will be out again in force next week, filling those potholes up. So the public is encouraged to let us know where you see one, and we will put it on our list and we'll get to them. We are getting some very good reports and information in our public system. I've been happy with what we've been able to do for that. And one of these days, once we get it a little bit more comfortable with it, I will present that to you as well so you can see how we're using that. But we are able to track our time and equipment costs, materials costs, so we have a kind of an idea of how much we're spending and getting those potholes fixed.
One of the comments I think maybe for future, or if you want to mention it now, I know in budget, we approved a new piece of equipment that will allow us to do potholes potentially in middle of December, January, things that we couldn't do now.
Right. Do you want the long version or the short version?
The short one.
So council did approve a machine that will allow us to reheat and rejuvenate existing asphalt or to keep hot mix hot. We still can't get hot mix this time of year. Nobody makes it. However, if we were able to get some and stockpile it, we could reheat it and have a new product, or we can reheat our asphalt millings and add a little bit of chemical so that we do have hot material. This time of year, you still have the problem with the cold holes, so we'd have to warm up the holes, and we'll experiment with that, see what we're able to do. But yes, we do anticipate it to be to allow us to be more efficient, so we don't have to drive so far to get hot mix and come back. And we should be able to get a better product, a better finished product with the hot mix as opposed to the cold mix. Hopefully, it'll last longer and be a better product for us.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Stay up there, Brian.
Councilman Brackett?
Okay. How many near misses have your staff had with vehicles while they're out filling potholes?
That's a good question. I guess I'm not aware of any, but I can check on that and see.
Okay.
We don't always report them. You know,
Right.
usually they kind of shake a fist or something like that and slow down. They do wear vests and they do have lights, and we do ask the public to look out for them. And I honestly don't know that we've had any recorded misses. I don't.
Okay. I've had members of the public reach out to me and let me know that they've seen, other members of the public behaving poorly. And
Okay.
I just kind of wanted to bring that to people's attention to say, please put your phones down, because it's illegal for one thing. And look out for people that are working on the road. Be kind while you're driving, put the road rage away, and look out for those people that are out there trying to fill those potholes that everybody has been so extremely upset about. And maybe drive the speed limit. Drive the speed limit and or slower when you know that we live in Iowa. We've got potholes. We have them every year. If you hit it going faster than the posted speed limit, you're probably going to damage your tire. So take it easy. And I wanted to say, I greatly appreciate the work that the streets department has been doing to try and get those filled, because we have had difficult weather. It's been back and forth. And I also wanted to comment at the same time that regardless, even though I voted against the roundabout at Fulham and Hauser, I want to make sure people are aware that that road is probably not going to be dealt with for a while now, because it is not in the budget. So I want to make sure people know that. And I appreciate the time that you put in on that, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
That's all I've got tonight.
Thank you. While I'm still standing here, I'm just going to say, I'm going to throw a plug in for our staff at Public Works who have been plowing the snow and filling the potholes. It's been an incredible winter. A winter of record for multiple things, snowfall and potholes and hours worked and products used. And I just can't say enough about our fantastic Public Works staff. I offered to have them come up here and be recognized like we recognize firefighters and police officers, and they didn't want that. They would prefer to just go under the radar and go about their business. They like what they do. They're happy to work for the city, but they don't want any special recognition. So I respect that, but I want them to know that I am proud of them and very thankful for the work that they've done this year. Thank you.
Your
Thanks,
Honor?
Brian.
Yes, go ahead.
Brian? Yes. Do we have any information on the upcoming spring flooding? Because we all live here. We know we're going to have something.
Yeah, we should expect a flood. I'll forward you the email. It does it a little bit more succinctly than I can. It's all based on percentages. Sure. So, there's a 90% chance of this level, and there's a 50% chance of this level, and moderate to extreme to severe flooding. I fully expect us to go above flood stage, probably early April. The predictions, it depends on, where you're at and what gauge you're looking at, but I would expect us to have a flood, and I'll get more information to you on that. And we monitor that closely. There was an update that came out today. I wasn't in my office, so I wasn't able to grab that before the meeting, but I can get that to you for tomorrow.
Okay. How soon can we inspect the levee? Are we pretty sure our levee is in good shape?
Our levee is in acceptable shape. That's how the Corps of Engineers describes it, or minimally acceptable is how they call it. We just had the inspection in November. Pat Lynch, our assistant city engineer, has been working on that. We just had a meeting yesterday to discuss the work that needs to be done with that. So we monitor that yearly, and then the Corps inspects it every winter, fall, and then the city re-inspects it but this time of year.
Okay.
Normally, there's not snow and stuff like this time of year, but we're in good shape. Nothing to worry about there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have anything else?
No, I was done. Thank you.
All right. Staff?
I'd just like to reiterate the thanks that were presented earlier to not only city council, but to city staff especially. The process for the budget starts back in November, as we all know, and finance department, department heads, and staff have put in a lot of time and effort, so I'd like to thank them as well. And in lieu of the chief coming up, I'll just simply say denied.
He didn't get it.
Later, I'll explain
We'll
it.
explain it.
Over donut and coffee.
I just had a couple of things. I wanted to thank the community that came out to celebrate Alexander Clark Day. I know there's a lot of people that put a lot of time and attention into that this year and going forward, really trying to draw more attention to our community and the special things that we're known for here. Remind everybody about Blue Out Day on April 5th to wear blue for child abuse prevention. Save the date for April 15th. We are working with Iowa Workforce Development Center to put together a youth job fair at the Muscatine High School on April 15th from 3 to 6. We have a lot of employers coming. Parents and their youth can come and fill out job applications, talk to the employers, secure a summer job, and make it be a win-win for everybody. Next week, we have an in-depth meeting here in City Council chambers, and we hope that you all have a good week. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.
Santo.